red meat doesn't cause colon cancer. Eating red meat at 9 p.m. causes colon cancer because your body can't assimilate it. So it's all about the time of day that your organs and systems want specific energies of food. You have to undo the pathological thinking that we've been taught to count calories, count fat grams, count this, count that. You can't, there's no counting. This is all has to do with the energetic charge needed by your body.
Hi, I'm Lynnis Woods-Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe. There are probably as many methods to the idea of releasing unwanted pounds and itches as there are people. But the reality is that there are some methods that work for everyone. And there are some methods that might kind of disconnect with you when it comes to what you've always thought would work versus what really does work. And that's why I'm so glad to have with us Dr. Sarah Doyle, who's going to be talking with us in particular about her method, the 7 times method, the truth about food and your body that has never been told until now. Dr. Sarah Doyle is a licensed physical therapist, a certified functional medicine practitioner, and she also is a diplomat for the American Clinical Board of Nutrition. So welcome, Dr. Sarah Doyle, to the V.I.B.E podcast. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I was looking forward to speaking to you and getting out to all your listeners.
Fantastic. Now, our listeners are women, mostly between the ages of 45 and 55. In fact, I like to say I'm actually too old for my demographic. I hope to be growing the 60 plus club. I'm 67, but either way it goes, I think this information is extremely important for any age when it comes to really understanding our relationship with food and how it functions in our body. So tell me, first of all, how you came to create this 7 times method.
Great. Yes. Thank you. So I'll give you a little background. I got sick from an antibiotic over 20 years ago. And I was traveling and I got a urinary tract infection. I was traveling. So I didn't go to a doctor. I got the Walmart special, the Azo cranberry pills, whatever those pills that turn your urine a different color. It didn't work. Went to my kidneys. I went to an urgent care. And at that time, the new greatest antibiotic was ciprofloxacin. It's a fluoroquinolone along with like Levaquin. Those are like 2 antibiotics. Like Levaquin, that's what they use in the hospital before they use vancomycin. Just really knocks everything out. So I was just 22 years old, completely destroyed my microbiome. And this is back before we really had the internet to access things. I mean, we had the internet, but not really. And so I got really sick. I thought I had Crohn's disease. I didn't know what I had. And I started reading books and taking tons of probiotics. I figured out that I just wiped out my microbiome with the antibiotic. Like I had thrush, I had chronic vaginal yeast infections, and nothing was digesting. I was getting diarrhea all the time. It was like miserable. I had to actually take an FMLA leave of absence because of this antibiotic that I took. And if you actually look it up, there's people who are wheelchair bound with it's paralyzed them. They don't really use this antibiotic too frequently anymore. There's a lot of side effects, tendon ruptures, namely, but some people, anyways. So I began my own quest and, I got to where I knew what foods triggered me. I developed a whole bunch of food allergies, food sensitivities, and a lot of people have food allergies. I mean, 20 years ago, I never went, if you go to dinner with a group of girlfriends now, nobody eats what's on the menu. Everybody's like, well, but not this. Oh, I can't have that. Oh, I can't eat this. Everybody at that one person at the table can eat everything that's on the menu. Why is that? Right. So I was taking copious amounts of digestive enzymes to help things digest and probiotics, trying to feed my microbiome. And in 2020, I went to Central America. I went for dentistry because I was in a car accident and I had fractured teeth, and going to a biological dentist in the United States, they were quoting me upwards of $30,000 for everything. Yeah. That is insane. So I had a friend who was an expat in Central America, and he's like, oh, come stay with me. No problem. I'll take care of you. My dentist is amazing. He's like, all my friends are coming to stay with me to get dental work done. So I stayed with him, and he's like, I'd started studying for functional medicine at that time. And he's like, you got to meet this guy. You guys, my friend in town, you guys are talking about the same stuff. You guys will totally hit it off. So I made a friend, and it turns out this friend is a liaison for a quantic medicine program in a remote area. So at 2020, they were in their 49th year of healing people using food as medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, that's really interesting. So there's like 12 books, and they're mostly in Spanish. So the first book was translated in English, and I started studying that with him while I was there for the few weeks. And, I don't have the cures for cancer. I don't have that, but I do have the basic timed eating protocols for disease prevention. And I thought, well, I'll give it a try. What's the worst thing that can happen? And I can tell you that historically, I used to eat a salad for dinner every night because I'm a woman, didn't want to get fat. And the guy tells me, well, you probably have a difficult time getting to sleep, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, I can't fall asleep before midnight unless I have a fever. He's like, you shouldn't be eating salad at night, the type of energy that's too much kinetic energy. You should be eating that at lunchtime. I was like, okay. So I switched that around. And then, I was eating carbs at breakfast. That carbs should be the last thing that you eat because they slow your nervous system down. As we know, that's why we call things like mac and cheese, we call it comfort, right? So eating oatmeal for breakfast, granola, if you want that, eat a small portion at dinner, make your breakfast your dinner. So just some basic things like that. Within 2 weeks of doing the diet, I mean, keep in mind, I took digestive enzymes like a double dose every meal for like 20 years. I didn't need another digestive enzyme. Haven't bought them since. It's been 4 years. Probiotics, yeah, I take some now. I take them before bed, but it's not like I needed them every time I ate just to calm my stomach. So I thought, wow, there's really something to this. I started implementing it with my coaching patients because I work with women who, well, historically, I worked just with women in perimenopause and menopause to help them get their hormones straight naturally, because Lord knows, this is a whole nother offshoot, but Lord knows we go to the gynecologist with a question and their only answer is take birth control.
Yeah, HRT.
Yeah,
they take some kind of pharmaceutical. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's only if they've gone to additional training, right? Because MDs only have 1 to 2 hours of OBGYN training. Even a gynecologist only has 6 to 8 hours of menopause training. So your OBGYN is ill-equipped to help you deal with your second puberty. But anyway, so I put the program, the 7X method, into the first week of my coaching group. And women, I have a 7-day reset with meal plans. There's a quiz in there that will help you decide which type of diet, which type you'll be most compliant with based on your preferences. There's 2 different 7-day resets with meal plans and recipes. Half the book is recipes. And my clients said, oh my God, I've lost a pant size this week. Or they would keep doing it. They would lose like 5 pounds in a week, all the inflammation, especially women who struggled with constipation. They would have remarkable turnaround. So I started using that in my coaching program while we waited for the at-home tests to arrive. I test hormones, brain chemistry, thyroid, and heavy metals. So these are all done with urine or finger prick. But yeah, so a lot of the women stayed with the 7X method throughout the whole program. And I start getting men too on my social media. Guys are like, what about us? We need help with testosterone too. Yeah, so I started integrating. So I used to have just a women's group, the Up Women Tribe, and now I have the biohacking boot camp because I brought men in there too. We have co-ed groups. So, and surprisingly, it works well. Like people are not, it's taboo to talk about sex, but especially I tend to have a lot of Christian conservatives, definitely not. We don't talk about having sex and libido in church, but it's an important, biomarker.
It's important biological function. And I can tell you just from my experience of working with women, especially over 50 or so, that becomes a common complaint over time, is that their lack of sex drive on their husband because of low testosterone. And then they're concerned about vaginal atrophy because they're not But the reality is that, having sex and all of that is good for you. If you're meant to have it, it helps to balance your hormones. And it's definitely good in terms of getting rid of stress and lowering your cortisol levels, all those things. It's a necessary evil. I tell my husband all the time, you have to make sure your testosterone levels are right, because you're not going to be putting my health in jeopardy, but it's a real deal. And, I was reading through, some of the things that you talk about. And I think one of the things that my clients talk about all the time is the issue with unwanted weight gain right around the time when they're in the midst of menopause. And of course, hormonal weight gain is different than the weight gain from overeating or other issues. So, can you share with us a little bit about that? What's the difference, and what kinds of recommendations do you make to your clients when it comes to that?
Absolutely. So the 7X method is a good start. When it comes to hormonally mediated weight gain, most people, most doctors, most people, they don't talk about the role of your adrenal glands in manufacturing your sex hormones. So one of the things I do that's different from any doctor is we do a 5 urine sample. And what this does is you look at your morning cortisol levels compared to, and then you take it every 4 hours until you go to bed. There's 5 samples. So when the lab gets these 5 samples, it also captures the metabolites for your sex hormones, because your body doesn't just, people have no idea, right? People think, oh, you're just like constantly getting these hormones. No, your body secretes things in pulses. So when we get 5 samples, the lab can take a little bit of urine from each sample and put it in and get a good idea of what your baseline production is. So we look at cortisol. So cortisol, I'll talk about the role of cortisol, and then I'll talk about the role of estrogen. So number one, your body, we're cavemen, right? Our body is wired to be prepared to run away from a tiger, or it's prepared to relax with our family around a campfire. And when you are stuck in traffic, late for an appointment, missing this, missing and you get angry, you activate the fight or flight mechanism. And your brain has no idea that you don't need to run anywhere, but the same mechanism takes place to prepare you to run from something. So your brain talks to your pancreas, which talks to your liver, which converts stored glycogen into glucose and shunts it to your arms and legs. Well, if you're just sitting in traffic, or you're angry about an email you got, or whatever, that glucose doesn't go back to the liver as stored glycogen. It gets deposited as abdominal fat. So, and this is primarily what men get, and this process will also stimulate insulin resistance, and it's a big contributor to diabetes, right? So I always look at the health of the adrenal glands, and because that's a contributor to having healthy blood sugar regulation. These things have to be checked before, and they have to be in place before you can fix your sex hormones. So that's why the urine panel I do will give us a really good insight on the dysfunction. And then especially if I have a woman in, as a caveat, woman in remission for breast cancer, like 1 in 8 women gets breast cancer, right? So 1 out of 8 women that I get in my group has had cancer. And there are clinical studies that show long-term remission correlates to having a healthy diurnal cortisol pattern. That means they wake up 30 minutes later, they have this huge spike, and then it drops during the day, right? That's a healthy pattern. But I get some women who have like an absolute opposite pattern. People who worked in the entertainment business, or people who like to stay up at night. There's no, the whole night owl thing is a complete misnomer. You cannot fight the planetary rhythms, right? So you have to be getting up with sunrise. You can't be sleeping until 9 o'clock in the morning, even on the weekends. It disrupts your rhythm. So number one thing, take care of your adrenals, because your adrenal glands, they don't just produce cortisol. They produce the catecholamines like norepinephrine, epinephrine, but they also produce these steroid hormones that are precursors to testosterone. Testosterone converts to estrogen. We have more testosterone in our body, like pound for pound, not that much, but you get what I mean. Then we actually have estrogen. Just estrogen is more active. So you have to have your adrenal glands healthy to make these steroid precursors, because if you don't have healthy adrenal glands and then you go into menopause, your body has no choice but to deposit fat in your abdomen, because there's an enzyme in belly fat called aromatase. and aromatase will convert testosterone into estrogen. So if you don't have healthy adrenal glands, your body's going to make a little pooch, and it is near impossible to get rid
To
of.
get rid of it. Yeah.
It's
What you mentioned something about taking care of your adrenal glands. What can women do proactively to take care of their adrenal glands? I know one thing you said was to adjust our sleeping time in terms of getting up when the sun rises instead of sleeping in all the time. But what are some other things that can be done?
Yeah, sleep is the number one thing. And sleep, unfortunately, is one of the first things to get affected by low progesterone. You know, your morning routine is going to affect your bedtime routine. So I try to tell women, get up and get outside. Even if you just sit on your balcony and have your coffee with 10 minutes of sunlight in your eyes, that's better.
Hmm.
Nothing.
Yes, I
Yeah,
just had a guest on not too long ago talking about sunlight in the eyes, and I had heard that before. But I'm up very early. I get up every morning around 4:30 or so, so I'm always up when the sun rises, but not necessarily looking into the sun for about 10 minutes or so, or looking into the sun when the sun goes down. I wasn't thinking about that, but I have been doing it the last 3 weeks. Just recently, I learned about this. Last 3 weeks or so, and I can see a difference in my energy levels during the day. And my circadian rhythms, I think, have been reset too because I'm having a deeper sleep. I'm still getting up at the same times, but my sleep is better. But I have seen some incremental changes. It's amazing. Why is that? Why does looking into the sunlight make a difference?
my book 7x method gets into detail on the science of that. You have receptors in the retina of your eyes when you open your eyes, so this turns off the pineal gland production of melatonin, right? So your body has melatonin produced by your pineal gland, that's your sleep hormone, and then oppositionally it has the cortisol production by your adrenal glands, right? So they're not being produced at the same time, ideally, unless you're doing a lot of blue light, you're really stressed out, you're waking up and you're having an abnormal cortisol push at night.
Mm,
So there's something called a chiasmatic nucleus, an SEN. It's like a little hub behind your optic nerves in your eyes, crisscross,
mhm,
and over around that area, it's a little knob. And so you have your main circadian rhythm, your sleep wake cycle, and that sets the circadian rhythm of all your organs and systems. So, we are just starting to learn this in Western culture. The 2017 Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology was awarded to three scientists who discovered that we have peripheral clock genes in all of our cells. And we
mm,
make melatonin in all our cells. Our whole body is designed to respond to the planetary influence of the sun and the moon. And so your organs, so in the 7X method, there's 7 different food groups that correspond to 7 different times, that correspond to 7 different groups of organs and systems that tend to rest. So our organs and systems take turns resting and peaking in activity. So when you have the ideal circadian rhythm, those organs and systems are starting to go back to the way they're supposed to. When you mess with yourself and you stay up past midnight on the weekend, you're affecting every organ, everything in your body. So, for example, the first food group in the 7X method is the purple group. That's from 7 to 9 a.m. And your body, this nourishes your pineal gland, which just gets off its work shift, right? Because it stops producing melatonin. It stops your pituitary gland. Your pituitary gland never really stops, but it has just like your heart never stops, but it has times where it works harder and less hard. So that, and then it also nourishes your DNA. And foods in this group are like dark berries, cacao, like real chocolate, not like Nestle processed anything,
mhm, mhm,
and coffee, tea, or you can skip this meal if you get sunlight in your eyes. All of these things will nourish that group of systems. The next food group is the blue group. That's from 9 to 11 a.m. And this is your eyes, your thyroid, and your hyaluronic acid production. Like, hello, aging. So the foods in this group are all water-bearing fruits. So you have a little apple or a piece of fruit at this time. And that makes sense because we know that the thyroid pumps out T4 overnight, and it takes a little rest between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. So women who have hypothyroidism may feel more fatigued. That's when they want to have a nap, especially if it's like subclinical and their doctor's not picking it up on blood work. But maybe their body temperature is only like 97 degrees, and it's not, their TSH and T4 isn't bad enough to get a prescription drug yet. So
mhm,
they're like,
mhm.
oh, you're fine, but you're not fine.
But you're
So
not fine. Yeah.
if you don't have, if just you have disrupted circadian rhythms, you can't have okay functioning organ. So this repeats. We have a green group around noon. That's when you eat your salads. This is when you nourish your sexual organs, your other sensory organs. This is the time of day where the green light frequency is the most predominant in the sky from the sun. So it all coordinates. And so they use a spectrophotometer, which is a measure, it's a tool, it's commonly used in the food industry, pharmaceutical industry. You can measure, it's like a spectrophotometer can measure the difference between Italian olive oil and Spanish olive oil.
Mhm.
Wines. When you look at your meat that you buy from the store, it can tell that's how you get the 80-20 ground beef versus the 10-90. They use spectrophotometry all the time. So they use this technology to measure the energy of food as it corresponds to the circadian rhythm of your organs and systems. So the eating in the 7X method, you don't have to eat 7 times a day. I mean, if you have in the 7-day reset, I have a meal plan for 7 times a day, and you can use juices like fresh pressed juices, not like Tropicana garbage juices made by Pepsi Company, real food. Even if it's just like one of those little like shots that are from,
Right.
you're getting that like in the afternoon is the non-green vegetables. Like you can do a little carrot ginger shot. That's perfect, right?
You're
So
talking about the late afternoon
yeah, in
because
the
you
late
said
afternoon,
12 o'clock salads and stuff. So like maybe
3 to 5 is the,
PM, like 2, 3 o'clock or something like that.
yeah, 1 to 3 p.m. is the red group. This is when you should
Okay.
eat red meats. Red
Hmm.
meat. Red meat doesn't cause colon cancer. Eating red meat at 9 p.m. causes colon cancer because your body
Got
can't
it.
assimilate it. So it's all about the time of day that your organs and systems want specific energies of food. You have to undo the pathological thinking that we've been taught to count calories, count fat grams, count this, count that. You can't. There's no counting. This is all has to do with the energetic charge needed by your body. There's no portion sizes. Obviously, if you eat too much of anything, you're stressing your body, you're inflaming your body, and you're going to gain weight. But this does recalibrate your metabolic systems and it sheds inflammation. So by doing this, you can help your sleep rhythm. But
I think that this is fascinating because, first of all, and I agree with everything you're saying. First of all, people, like I mentioned earlier, do all these different things and they don't get results. But one of the reasons why this kind of method will get you the results that you need is because it's in conjunction with the other intrinsics that influence how we feel and how we live. Very rarely do we take into consideration nature and the sun and all those other outer peripherals because we're thinking, well, that doesn't have anything to do with me, but it has everything to do with you, that correlation with our environment and our bodies. That's why I think your method is just so awesome. This is just fascinating. Now, I know you have a book. What's the name of your book?
it's 7X method.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay, that is it.
that's the thin formula. I wrote that when I just started the coaching program before I was introduced
Mhm.
to 7X. I wrote both of these before ChatGPT, FYI. It's like I actually wrote it. The thin formula is thyroid hormones, intercourse, and nutrition. It's $5 on Amazon. And then this other one, 7X method, that's available anywhere books are sold. I self-published that one. I'm not a publisher, but so I learned my lesson. I put in the I put in the 20 grand. I hired an editor. I had it a book cover. I'm distributed by Simon and Schuster. I did the sound booth thing. So you can get it in Audible, you can get it in Kindle, and you can get it in paperback. And then I have the new version. I have a lot of Jewish people. I'm in Miami Beach. So we have a lot of Russian Israeli Jewish people. And they do a lot of eating in their celebrations. And so some of my female clients, that there's, we want to try to help the Jewish community. We always want to help our communities and our people. But so there's like a gluten-free challah bread. And then there's also, I have a juice manufacturer here in Miami Beach who tailored a juice cleanse towards that. Otherwise, I was just picking random companies, whatever was on sale on Amazon. I'm like, well, juice is juice. They ship it to you frozen, whatever. But so the second version has the upgraded details of that. But I wanted to touch upon, you asked about abdominal weight gain. So
Yes. Hmm.
it's really important. I'd be remiss if I didn't and talk about this, is that even if you're eating the 7X method and you're exercising, you may still gain weight. And why is that? Well, when your estrogen drops, you start Estrogen isn't just about sex. It's about protecting the endothelial lining of all your blood vessels. So that's like the little delicate inside is like less than tissue paper thickness, right? Inside all of your blood vessels. And it's not something you can measure in a traditional hospital like calcium store like score where they like, do the chest x-ray and give you calcium. That checks for the big vessels. There's a doctor from Netherlands. He has a device called a glycocheck, which will go under the tongue and check the microvasculature. So Europe is a little bit ahead of us in this. We don't really have this in the United States, but the point I'm making is that when your estrogen drops, and this goes for men too, when testosterone and estrogen drop in men, the microvasculature starts to develop plaques. That's when with everything, if a woman eats the 7X method and exercises every morning, she may still have this issue because the drop in estrogen will start to cause increased triglycerides. And this is where you start getting the atherosclerosis, and you get it in these microvessels. There are a couple supplements in my program that I use. I work with a specific supplement company. So there are a couple supplements we can do that are undergoing research trials right now to reverse some of this small blood vessel damage. And why is this important? Because 1 out of 4 men and 1 out of 5 women will die of cardiovascular disease. That's a heart attack, that's a stroke. Most of the research is done on men. So we know, heart attack, pain in the left jaw, pain in the left arm, like, or whatever, that the symptoms aren't the same for a woman. She just may have heartburn and she doesn't know the difference. Mm-hmm. It's so women tend to die of these. And I worked in trauma ICU, neuro ICU, and let me tell you, a stroke ain't pretty.
No. And actually, a lot of people don't realize that heart disease actually is the number one killer for women. It's not breast cancer, it's heart disease.
Yeah.
We have so much misinformation out there, or it's not necessarily misinformation, but the wrong kind of information for what it is that we're trying to do. And you're so right about what's going on viscerally with our stomach area. Now, there's a question I saw on your pod match where I found you.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know the answer to this. And I'm fascinated by it because I was a dancer in my other life, and I still stay in shape and dance and do all kinds of things. But it says, does it matter what time of day or what type of exercise I do? And I would love to hear the answer to that.
Yes, absolutely. It sure does. So that would goes back to the circadian rhythm and the cortisol. Mm-hmm. So you have a diurnal pattern. You can look on Google Images for diurnal cortisol output. It should be 20 times higher in the morning than it is before bed.
Yes, that's true.
So there is good stress and bad stress. Exercise is good stress. So if you're going to do an aggressive exercise like Orange Theory, right, where everybody's like competing to get their heart rate, whoever wants to blast their heart rate on the screen, right? So something like that should be done in the morning. Mm-hmm. I don't recommend doing that after dinner. Something like CrossFit, doing that 7-8 o'clock at night. So this is what that does is it not only it causes a cortisol burst at night when we don't want it, but that will also decrease your ability to achieve deep sleep. So you have back to sleep. That's the most powerful drug you have. Sleep is divided.
It is.
Yeah, it's nice. So we have 90-minute sleep cycles. And in these sleep cycles, we have 4 phases. The first 2 phases are light sleep. Then we have deep sleep. And then we have REM sleep. So deep sleep is when you're repairing. And REM is when you're forming memories, right? It's the rapid eye movement. So you go through these 4 phases of sleep every 90 minutes. And when you exercise before bed aggressively, like go ahead, take a walk after dinner, do Pilates, do yoga, something chill, but don't do something that's going to max heart rate because you're going to rob yourself of your body's ability to repair, and you're going to miss that deep sleep cycle. So yeah, it does matter what you do. If you're going to be aggressive, do it in the morning. Don't screw yourself over to where you can't even repair. I started doing that. Like I live in Miami Beach, and I have some neighbors that are personal trainers in their 30s. Mm-hmm. I'm well over 10 years older than them. And I'm like, I'm going to go rollerblading. We have this thing called Hot Girl Skate where we get our rollerblades mm-hmm. and we skate at night. And sometimes we weren't leaving till like 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh my God, it totally wrecked my sleep. I did it for about a week, and I was like, I know.
Can't do that. But you know what? Talking to you, Dr. Sarah, I think I have passed most of what you're talking about pretty well. I do a lot of these things already. Right. I am definitely an early riser, have been, before I had kids, but after I had children, they're very close together. So, and I was breastfeeding until the majority of them were well over 18 months. So I was up early all the time anyway, and my body just stayed that way. So I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and there's a few things I wanted to share with you, and I wanted to share with the audience that I learned because, first of all, I got into all of this doing what I do now because I had an anxiety disorder. I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, and I started doing more and more research about what could be causing it. Anecdotally, I knew part of it was from post traumatic stress because of how I found out about my mom who was hit by a fire truck on her way to work. It was very traumatic. But I went to therapy, but that the idea of my having PTSD and maybe that's the reason why I had anxiety was never addressed. It was 20 years later when I was like about 51 where I hit the wall. One morning I woke up and I was crying. I couldn't figure out why. I decided to take a some time off. I took a sabbatical. I happened to have worked for a HMO in human resources in charge of recruitment. And during that time, of course, I saw the doctor. They wanted to put me on pharmaceuticals for the symptoms. I said, you know what? I got to peel back the layers and get to the causes. And
Mhm.
so over time, with reading and studying and everything else, I learned a lot of things. I learned about the fact that I probably did have PTSD, but I also learned about the cortisol levels. And I was right in the middle, perhaps, although it seems like it never ends, menopause at the time. And I found out much later that part of what I had was menopausal anxiety based upon the cortisol levels. Then I learned over time that one of the things you don't want to do if you're struggling with high cortisol levels, which almost everybody does, women, especially menopausal women, when they wake up first thing in the morning, your cortisol levels are super high. So I started, first of all, not drinking coffee first thing in the morning. I gave myself at least a couple of hours. I would get outside, look into the sunlight, do my exercises and my walking, and kind of stay moving for the first couple of hours of the day. A lot of people say, "How can you move for 2 hours?" You don't even think about it. Do my exercise, do the dishes, do all these different things to stay up, and this became a part of my regime. And over time, the anxiety stopped and I got rid of the medication. And I also decided after the end of that year not to go back to my
Mhm.
job. And the rest is history. 17 years later, here I am still in the wellness industry. So I was so glad to hear you say some of those things because it's like, yes, because those are some of the things that worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That happens a lot when people read my book. That's what they intuitively know, and then I just put science to it. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, that could be also there's a drop in progesterone. That progesterone is calming and it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. So and it interacts with GABA in your brain. So
Mm-hmm.
that is usually the first thing to dip before estrogen dips. Progesterone takes a dip, and that's in the perimenopausal years. And that's also two things: Alzheimer's affects 1 out of 6 Americans, but has double the rate on women. Why is that? So what I started listening to this researcher out of Cornell. She used to just study simply Alzheimer's, and then she started studying Alzheimer's with menopause. So one thing, exercise is probably the best thing you can do for Alzheimer's prevention. And number two, make sure you start testing your hormones in your 40s. If you go to your doctor or you find a functional medicine doctor like me, where if you don't have time, I get it. I can order you an at-home urine test. You do it. I took the damn thing with me in my purse and I was peeing in the public bathroom at the clinic I own. Nobody cares. Nobody knows. Nobody cares.
Right,
It's fine.
right.
You can throw it in your refrigerator for up to a week until you can get to a UPS to drop it off. It's no big deal. So I'm happy to help women that way, but it's critical to keep an eye on it because what this researcher is finding out, and she's in the middle of a huge case or clinical study right now, is that the amyloid plaques characteristic of Alzheimer's start laying down for women in perimenopause when she starts skipping cycles. So it's really critical. I'm trying to get to as many women as I can in their 40s and early 50s. By the time I get to the 60s, I can help them feel better, but I can't really reverse the damage done to their blood vessels. I can't, and that goes for the blood vessels in your brain, cardiovascular disease in your heart and in your brain. So I can't reverse the damage done, but so if we can get to people earlier and have them start keeping
This
it
is
hormones, we can do it with natural substances. You don't need big pharma. I can teach you how to take tests at home. I can teach you how to which herbs to use, where to order them, get good quality ones, pharmaceutical grade nutraceuticals. And you can, I've got my mother in her 70s and
mhm.
she's doing fine. She did not do well with BHRT. She's got sick, her boobs got big. She got fat. She was like, get me off of this. We had a detox for 6 months. So some people do okay on BHRT. Some people don't. So there's options, but it's just, I want to get the message out. Do not procrastinate.
Yeah, that is so important. We got to have you back to talk about the Alzheimer's and all of that because I have quite a few followers that are in their 40s. And actually I've noticed when I was looking at my stats now that people like about 35 and up are now starting to because they're trying to figure out how can I get to where you're at because people look at me at 67 and say, "What? You don't look 67." But there's all kinds of reasons why. And some of it's genetics, but had I stayed in the job that I have, the stress and the lack of sleep, and I was doing all kinds of things with my body because I was still dancing. Nutritionally, I knew nutrition, but I wasn't always implementing it. So it was just a perfect storm for me to go crazy that morning when I woke up. But making the decision to try to make incremental lifestyle changes over time is the reason why I look the way I look right now. It's something that you have to set as a priority, and I just love what you're doing. Thank you so much for the information that you're sharing in the world. I want everybody that's listening right now, okay, Vibers, take a look at the show page and all the links to Dr. Sarah are there, okay, for you to get in touch with her, to do a 30-minute consult. I'm putting all the links there for you to check her out. I also have her YouTube channel, so you can take a look. And also her other social media. This is someone you want to know and talk with because as a functional practitioner, there's so many things that they cover that the doctors, for whatever reason, don't. And I'm not anti-AMA. Somebody told me I was anti-AMA. No, I'm just aware.
You just need help. I also offer your listeners a $2,000 off my coaching program.
I saw that.
Yeah, the passcode for that is V.I.B.E 20000 V.I.B.E 2000. And then you can always just reach out to me if you don't want to order directly from the website because it's a big purchase. It's $3,000, but it covers you for the whole. My patients get a way better success because you have 24/7 access to me on the WhatsApp channel, especially if you're trying to work with a psychological illness or trying to get off. Sometimes like long-term use of Prozac will affect your progesterone. So sometimes we have to get people off of some of these pharmaceuticals and it's achievable. We can do it naturally. We can talk about brain health in the next podcast, but
absolutely.
So I know at times are tough, right? Our economies are tough. We just want to help people.
But I look at it this way, Dr. Sarah, you either pay for it on the front end or the back end, but guaranteed you're going to pay for it on the back end. And on the back end, maybe you're thinking that's not my problem, but your family's left with all of the expenses as a result of you not being proactive and taking good care of yourself. So thank you so much for coming on the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. It's been wonderful having you here today.
My pleasure. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. And everybody, thanks so much for listening. I love the fact that you're here. And thank you for making us one of the top 10% podcasts in the world. Let's continue to listen, continue to share. This was an important podcast. And so are all the other ones. Such great information that's going to help you to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.